Good morning. Today, the rise of beef prices for UK farmers in 2025 and big fish, big price tag.
A local club paid £6,000 a piece for two 30-plus pounders.
That's the one everyone's chasing. It's like the winning ticket in the pond somewhere.
That's it, the golden carp.
The business of carp farming. First, one of the biggest questions right now is, can you use land to tackle environmental problems like climate change and grow enough food? Well, agroforestry is one answer, a best of both, which puts farming and forestry in the same field. It's something which has been growing in popularity over the past few years, and we're exploring why on the programme this week. Eddie Rickson has planted an orchard on his Oxfordshire farm where he'll graze Wagyu beef cattle.
Immediately in front of us are some rows of Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire varieties of apple and cherry tree. This is in a typical alley format, so we've got rows of different varieties of apple trees and cherry trees. If I want to be a commercial successful bee farm, I need to be very mindful of what the future climate landscape is going to be. And so cows will still be able to graze underneath these trees. They will still be able to grow meat in a more ethical way, because they'll be able to seek shade and shelter during those hot, dry summer grazing months.
Which might be hotter, drier, or conversely wetter and stormier.
Exactly. So we are creating a more resilient landscape. And I think that's the important thing. And I think that's where agroforestry really is a great example of that, because you are continuing to grow, in our instance, beef, but we will be also generating a second crop, which will be apples and cherries, which we'll be able to sell through our farm. And I think the important thing with choosing Buckinghamshire and Oxfordshire varieties is we're able to demonstrate to people, a wider variety of fruit than you'd get in a supermarket, which tends to be very narrow. And so for me, trees are going to play an important part. And I think the key thing is where you have unprofitable, unproductive fields, or in this instance where they will work in harmony with the production of beef. And I think for me, if you can really feel into how trees will provide an important service to your farm, then they can work, in synergy with everything else you're doing.
Eddie Rickson talking there to Sarah Swadling. Paul Burgess is Professor of Sustainable Agriculture and Agroforestry at Cranfield University. He told me what's included in the term agroforestry.
A simple definition is farming with trees. So it includes traditional systems like parklands, wood pastures, grazed orchards. If we bring together crops and trees, we sometimes call that silvo-arable agroforestry. And if we bring together trees and livestock, we sometimes call that silvopastoral systems.
So it can be as simple as having more trees on your farm and using them to shelter animals, for instance, or as complicated as planting rows of fruit trees in an arable field so that you combine both growing the arable crop and the fruit trees.
It encompasses a wide range of systems, and it requires a sort of new way of thinking. I guess when I did an agricultural degree, we never talked about trees, but increasingly sensible farm management requires the sensible integration of trees within the farm business.
Why might it be a good idea?
Firstly, the products that they can provide, so be it fruit, nuts, timber, wood products, biochar. Secondly, the enhancement of your existing enterprises, be it shelter and shade for livestock, welfare benefits, minimising wind erosion. Thirdly, I think the carbon benefits are critical. It's easy to demonstrate the carbon stored within a tree. Fourthly, the cultural benefits, the landscape, the recreational, the biodiversity benefits, they're all clear. And sort of fifthly, very often a farmer who plants sort of woods or small areas of wood on a farm enjoys them for themselves as well.
How much do you think the growing popularity is down to the fact that this could be included as an option under the sustainable farming incentive, so you could get public money to help you do this?
For most farmers, managing trees on farms isn't something that's obvious. So availability of training and resources and the ability to see what has been done in other situations is particularly helpful.
What do you think will be the impact of the uncertainty over the future of the SFI on uptake?
So my understanding is that DEFRA will sort of give an update over the summer. My understanding is that there is still grants available for you to help develop an agroforestry plan. But I think in terms of long-term planning, the reasons for developing agroforestry need to be sort of separate from the grant arrangement at any particular time. For instance, the need to sort of move towards net zero. I think that's a key sort of platform on which you can develop an argument for integrating trees more on a farm. And if there are grants available, then that's great. But I wouldn't base a decision to go forward with agroforestry on the grants alone.
Professor Paul Burgess, more on agroforestry all week. Now, as it's been a bank holiday weekend, there will have been many huddled figures around fishing lakes hoping to catch the carp of a lifetime. It all begins on the farms which produce those big fish. And as Sarah Falkingham's been finding out, they can command a big price. She met North Yorkshire carp farmer Dave Pollett.
This is the hatchery. This is where we bring the carp in, the brood stock, get the temperatures up to the low 20s, get them ready to spawn, strip the eggs.
So that's getting the eggs out of the female carp.
We then fertilise them with the milk from the males, give that a good stir, and we keep them inside in warm water for probably a month, 6 weeks, till they get to about 1 centimetre in size, and then they're ready to go outside into what we call the fry ponds.
Should we go out there then, see where the carp would live later?
We're coming to the end of the hatchery now. We're going outside. Unlock the door. And as you can see, this is a shallow pond. It warms up a lot quicker than the main water.
So we're surrounded by trees here at the bottom of a valley. It's wooded. We've got the River Washburn trickling beside us. Under, I have to say, the most beautiful blue sky. There's not a cloud in the sky today. And this still pond here that's probably about 50 metres long and about 10 metres wide.
Yeah. And like I say, it warms up quicker, so we can grow them quicker. And then the shape of it, it's easy to net to get the fish out when we're ready to crop them.
And what do the carp eat?
When they first put in as fry, they eat all the microscopic algae and invertebrates. And then as soon as they're big enough, we feed them with a high protein food, a pellet-based diet based on animal offal, rendered down animal bits. And
is it sustainable, do you think? That's...
Well, that is more sustainable than the fish meal. I think that's why they brought it out. That's for the sustainability of it.
What happens to the waste that these fish produce? Obviously, they're going to excrete it.
At the bottom end of the farm, we have a settling pond. So everything flows through the settling pond. And if you get the balances right, the bacteria in there eat all the waste products before it goes out of the farm. We have to have the water checked. It's checked every month. They check it coming into the farm and they check it going out of the farm.
Who's this?
The Environment Agency. And 99.9 times out of 100, the water quality is better going out of the farm than it is coming in. There's less solids in the water, the oxygen content's higher, so it's all good.
And what's the size of the market? Can you sell everything that you make?
We sell everything we can get at the minute. There's a lot of problems for the coarse fisheries out there. There's a lot of predation now and by otters, cormorants, so they're having to replace the stock to keep the anglers coming. They're having to spend a lot of money to keep those fisheries going.
And how quickly do the carp grow then? What size are we talking here? And how much do they cost at the end?
Well, they'll be £4 after 2 years. A £10 probably takes about 4 to 5 years up here to grow. A £10 carp's probably worth £100 and £120.
And if you wanted a super-sized carp, say, your £30 ones, how much do they cost?
A few £1,000. A local club paid £6,000 a piece for two 30-plus pounders.
So that's the one everyone's chasing. It's like the winning ticket in the pond somewhere.
That's it, the golden carp.
Dave Pollett there. Now, the prices farmers are paid for beef cattle have increased at an unprecedented rate this year. They've gone up by about 25% since January. Of course, price and profit are not necessarily the same thing. It takes a bit of time for statistics to come through, telling us how far costs may have risen. Nonetheless, the prices are very welcome to farmers, and for now at least, retailers haven't passed on the full increase to customers. Hannah Clark, lead red meat analyst at the industry-funded Agriculture and Horticulture Development Board, told me what's driving these prices.
Prices started rising at the middle of 2024, and we've seen really strong rises since the start of the year. On average, prices are up around 25% since the first week of January, which is, phenomenally strong. We've seen sort of weekly gains around, on average, like the 10 pence a kilo mark, which, normally we would see moves of a couple of pence on the week. So, really astounding growth seen in prices.
We last chatted about this on the programme back in February, and honestly, some people might have thought, well, that's not going to carry on at this unprecedented level. Obviously it has, and it's gone up since then. Why?
We're seeing tighter numbers of cattle on the ground, and the numbers of young stock coming through the system are lower. What we've seen in livestock numbers is a structural reduction, really, in the number of cattle kept in the UK over several years. On the other side of that, demand has been, rather resilient domestically for beef. Last year we saw modest growth in the amount of beef sold through retail. There was some sort of economic uncertainty around at the time, cost of living crisis still. We did see strong demand for cost-effective cuts like mince, for example. But overall, that sort of picture for demand has been rather resilient.
And is that reflected in other countries, or is that a peculiarly British thing?
So at the moment, the beef market's really interesting in terms of that global supply. We are seeing reductions in the number of cattle in some key producing regions and some key markets around the world. So the US, for example, which is obviously in the news a lot at the moment, is running with historically low cattle inventories, and that's really been driven by previous years of poor weather and destocking as a result of that. So the US is a massive player in the global market, and that is really contributing to price strength for cattle across the world. In Europe as well, we've seen reductions in the number of cattle, dairy and suckler cows, and in Ireland as well.
What about the role of imports here? Because you could imagine that someone, the Americans eyeing up our market, or Australia, with whom we do now have a free trade deal, would look at these prices and think now is the time to think about exporting to the UK.
Yeah, we are a net importer of beef, which means we have to import because we don't produce enough domestically for our demand. Our main supplier is Ireland. We have seen increased volumes of beef coming in from Australia since the free trade agreement with them was ratified. But volumes are still quite small in comparison to what we get from Ireland, for example.
Hannah Clark from the AHDB there. That's it from us. I'm Charlotte Smith. The producer is Sarah Swadling, and Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.